Hello, sir. I am Doris Saron from BSED-ENGLISH TV, and I will be discussing the spoken poetry and examples. So, my objectives are to discuss what spoken poetry is and to give an idea on how to make spoken poetry. So, what is spoken poetry? Spoken word or spoken poetry is a poetic form that is meant for performance and incorporates the wordplay, alliteration, and intonation of ancient oral traditions. Spoken word poetry is a new poetry form that became popular in the early 20th century. It is one of the most important modern art forms. There are several spoken artists across the world who have chosen these forms in order to share their views, takes, and stance on crucial social issues, orthodox cultural values, and prejudices. The genre finds its roots in ancient oral traditions and performances. So, history of spoken word poetry. The oral poetry tradition has existed in society for several years through a cycle of listening, practice, and memorization. In ancient Greece, the lyrics were similar to modern day spoken word poetry. Performance poetry has existed in Africa from prehistoric times. The genre developed in the United States in the early 20th century. According to scholars, the poetry of the Harlem Renaissance, Beat Generation, and Last Poets played an important role in the development of the spoken word in the U.S. Elements of spoken word poetry. Subject. The subject is what the poem is about. It includes the topics that is one way or the other have an impact on the performer or the writer. The main purpose of the spoken word is to give a message to society. So, some of the recurring topics in spoken word poetry are racism, inequality, social justice, corruption, gender, and LGBTQ issues. Gateway. The gateway line is the combination of the first few lines of a spoken word that are meant for introducing the subject to the audience. Motif. A motif is a recurring idea across a literary text. Spoken word poetry includes the repetition of one word, line, or idea several times during the performance. There can be one or more motifs that help the performer enhance the work's larger meaning. Wordplay. Wordplay is one of the important elements of spoken word poetry. It means to use a particular word in different contexts to create a punning effect. Also means the amalgamation of different images, emotions, and sounds in order to make the performance more lively. The next is element of spoken word poetry, the sound devices. Spoken word artists use several sound devices to create euphony. Those devices help the speaker to enhance their message, motif, and subject. The important poetic devices found in a spoken word piece include alliteration. It is the repetition of the same sound at the beginning of adjacent word. So it is also a technique that makes use of repeated sound at the beginning of multiple words. Grouped together, it is used in poetry and prose. So the next is the assonance. It is the recurrence of the vowel sound in successive words. It occurs when two or more words that are close to the one another use the same vowel sound. So next is the consonants. It is the reuse of consonant sounds in the nearby words. So it is the repetition of consonant sounds in words. Phrases, sentences, or passages in prose and verse writing. So next is the rhyme. It is the recurrence of identical sounds in consecutive lines. The word rhyme refers to the pattern of similar sounding words used in writing. So next is repetition. It is the use of one word or idea several times across a text. So the repetition is an important poetic technique that sees writers reuse words, phrases, images, or structures multiple times within a poem. So onomatopoeia occurs when a word imitates a natural sound. An onomatopoeia is a word that imitates the natural sound of a thing. So the power line. The power line is usually the last line of a spoken word poem that contains a hand-hitting message or one idea that stays longer with the audience. It emphasizes the idea or the message of the piece. Artists use such line in order to make their audience think even if the performance has ended. For instance, the last line of Nora Cooper's I Won't Write Your Obituary leaves the audience awestruck. So the next is 5 tips for writing spoken word poetry. Tip 1. Use concrete language. Spoken word poetry should incorporate certain words and phrases that can create vivid images, sounds, actions, and other feelings and sensations in your readers. If your spoken poetry is strong and rich with imaginary, your audience will be able to feel, smell, and taste along with your form. A good spoken word poetry is just like reading a good book. Tip 2. Use repetition. In any type of poetry, repetition is a simple yet powerful poetic device. The repetition of a phrase or imagine will help to extend that particular thought or image beyond its original meaning. This can help the writer get a point across or exaggerate a point that they want to make. Tip 3. Incorporate rhyme. The use of rhyming in your poem can add to your performance and make it more entertaining and fun to follow for your audience. Use elements of surprise and moderation when incorporating rhyme into your spoken word poetry. Tip 4. Attitude. Every poet's poem will be unique, and they will also have their own unique perspective of the subject or topic that they choose to write and speak about. It is essential that a spoken word poem is able to capture the feelings that the poet has and convey them to their audience, the rest of the world. Be sure that your poem incorporates a certain attitude or feeling to your audience. Tip 5. Persona. As a poet or writer, you can portray anyone and any feelings that you want to in your poetry. For example, you choose to write your poem in the voice of someone else or take on the opinion of another person that might be different from your own. Be creative, be creative and have fun with the subject you choose. Best spoken poetry examples are Hair by Elizabeth Acevedo and If I Should Have a Daughter by Sarah Kay. The first poem is about a girl who refuses to whiten her hair, which is as beautiful the way it is. She does not want to forget the history of blacks drawn by chains as slaves. Her strangled, her strangled curly hair is the symbol of their identity that she bears with pride. So in the second poem, the If I Should Have a Daughter by Sarah Kay, in the poem If I Should Have a Daughter, the poet uses structured poetic devices, punctuation, and uh, enjambment to send her message. The main idea her poem is trying to get across in that life is hard and can be intimidating but doesn't have to be done alone. A strong example of a punctuation is when Sarah Case writes, because no matter how wide your fingers, your hands will always be too small to catch all the pain you want to heal. Believe me, I've tried. Verse 18. In other words, what she is saying is that sometimes there's a fairly difficult task without someone's help. When she means by this is some things are meant for collaboration work. This connects to her message because but doesn't have to be done alone. So that's all. This is my references. These are the references. That's all. Thank you.